to another episode of driving sales while driving. So I love driving sales. I feel like I have the ability and the experience to identify the friction within the sales mechanism of any organization. And what I'm able to do is to see the places that are causing tension, and relieve that tension with a process or a system that requires as little intervention from the human as possible. I mean, that's my goal, is to take us, with the technology we have today, we can eliminate a lot of the intervention needed in order to get the output so that the human can process the feedback and execute the direction successfully. And what that means is we can spend less time worrying and more time preparing, executing that which is, critical to their committed goals and results. So that's the goal that I have for business owners, is to help them build out some simple systems and help them evolve and grow over time. So yeah, the first step is to get a lead responded to as fast as possible, to collect as much data as possible. And when it comes to a speaker, someone makes an inquiry to them or responds to their RFP, they can maintain a record of that. Like, what I don't think a lot of speakers understand is every lost gig is a potential gig. But there is no losing gigs. There's only delaying the gig to the time you get it. You're gonna, if what you have to say is of value to that organization, that is, then there's no not getting any gigs. It's 100% win rate. You just have to be patient to win it down the road. So if you get beat out by somebody, then that's great, because next year is going to come around. Just like day, there's night. There's a pattern. Companies don't have one meeting ever. If they have a meeting, that's it. It's their meeting, and it's done. So there's that benefit. But there's a pattern. So what I do is I identify known patterns. Let's call, and when it comes to sales, those patterns you could call them recipes, or I call them strategies. And the great thing about patterns is that they are predictable, right? There's a predictability to patterns. The first thing I actually learned about communication is that most human beings are stuck in patterns of communication that either empower or disempower them. And the conversation they're having about any particular thing at any particular time is more than likely based on a pattern that they've already seen before, already heard before. They're not like really doing anything new. And that's especially true if you're working on something and you're not getting the result. Well, what's really true is if you've given up on something that you didn't get the result on. You had an intention and you quit because you decided that it wasn't possible. And repeated failure is not in your, playbook. And that's the human predictable response. I mean, it's predictable that a human would do that. It's also predictable that a human would, there was an old thing 45 years ago, that 40 years ago I heard that said, what's the difference between a human and a rat? So, well, if you put a rat in a maze and you put cheese at the end of a tunnel, and then the rat will find the cheese at the end of the tunnel, they'll go to that tunnel immediately, and so will a human, right? They'll find the cheese. But the difference between a rat and a human is that if you move the cheese, the human will continue to go down that tunnel even if there's no cheese, right? So how that shows up in your life is that if your mother-in-law still bugs you, you're going down the same tunnel getting no cheese. You haven't tried a new tunnel. The rat will try a new tunnel. If there's no cheese in the tunnel they find, they're just like, oh, there's no cheese, let me go find another tunnel. But a human will bitch and complain that there's no cheese, which comes to my point where, well, one of the ways when I coach people, it's really a simple little thing, is where's the complaint? Wherever a great way to find where you're stuck is to look for the complaint, and the complaint could be many things. It could have many expressions, but it's not a conversation for getting the thing. It's a conversation about not having the thing. That's a complaint. So whether it's very elegant and educated and researched and documented and proven, if the thing is possible, and that is to say, if anybody else in the world has the thing, then the thing is possible, right? The thing is in existence and you don't have it, and you're talking about not having it instead of having it, then you're in the complaint. You're stuck at the bottom of the tunnel bitching that there is no cheese. I mean, that's just what you got to confront. That's the truth. Right? If somebody else has it and you don't, then you're stuck, and all the talking you're doing is not getting you unstuck. So that means that there's something you just haven't tried yet, which, by the way, is the secret to overcoming failure, is to find something new to try. I don't know if Einstein really said this, but he's attributed this quote that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And, maybe that's true. Maybe it's true for you. I would say take a look at it and see, is there some part of your life that drives you crazy, something that annoys you, something that bothers you, something that disharmonizes you in your life? And the question is, are you doing anything different about it? When I teach my communication classes, and I get to the enrollment part of the class, which is, I'm really, I did it in corporate America, and they were forced to be there, and I wanted them to be joyous and engaged and have the curriculum make a difference. So I would reinforce this particular point that communication courses and classes and all those things are for you to deal with them, that person, and we all have one. And I say this is not for them. It's for your experience when communicating with them. Because there are only two choices you have in a relationship that doesn't work. Maybe three. When you're in a relationship that you have to be in. And that is, you change and adjust to make it better, or you wait for them to change to make it better. So and both are valid strategies. They both work. They both happen. But the question is, which choice will serve your life now? And then, what are the odds they're sitting in a communication course right now that's going to make them communicate with you better? So, wait all you want, but know that the price you're paying is your choice. It's no longer is it their fault. You have to take responsibility that the quality of your relationship is now your fault. Even if before you learned this, 100% of it was their fault. And you were convinced and everybody agreed it was 100% their fault. They were 100% responsible for the quality of the relationship that you had. Now that you know that there's something you can do to alter your experience of them, it's now 100% your responsibility. So you're welcome. So anytime you complain about it, it's on you. And the best thing you can do, and what I encourage people to do when they go back home after the class, is to share with the people closest to them that they wanted to say, listen, I'm committed. You got to tell it like this. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm committed to live a great life, to experience love, joy, and peace in every aspect of my life, because life won't always be easy, but I can experience pain and not prolong it. Like there will be pain, but the suffering is what we want to eliminate. It's the suffering with the idea that you have no agency over the pain, that the pain is that there's nothing you can do about the pain ultimately until maybe suicide. Which goes back to why I'm doing this, is that my vision is to help in some way prevent veteran suicide. I just heard about a guy who's a veteran who committed suicide because he couldn't find work for 6 months, and that's frustrating. And he had a family, and he checked out. I don't know what his life insurance situation was, if that was the solution to their finances, and that was his noble act. I mean, people call it selfish. I don't necessarily know that that's true. I've had the thoughts, and I wasn't thinking about being selfish. I was thinking about ending the pain. But wouldn't it be great if you had another choice? You always have the choice of committing suicide. You always have the choice of ending your life. But I also want you to know you have a choice of ending the suffering in your life. It may not eliminate the pain, but it may reduce the suffering. Because when a human feels they have agency, then they suffer less. That is to say, they choose meaning that's meaningful to them. And so my vision is to share that message that the past does not equal the future. And the future doesn't exist except that for which we create in our minds. And when we invent a future that is meaningful to us, we're inspired to live into that future. And that is to take the actions required to take. It gives us a sense, that's what gives us a sense of being. And when you look at the design of human beings, at the core of who we are is survival, right? And so that's the underlying mechanism, right? Is survival. We want to survive. Why do we want to survive? So that we can procreate. That is to live well enough to produce offspring that survives the future. And that's the future we live into. Survive to survive. So that's built into our DNA. And it's compelling, and it works. It has produced significant humans on the planet. And so that's at the core of it. Now, the goal is what drives us as human beings. We're goal-seeking creatures. A pattern we have is we seek goal. We first seek food, clothes, food meaning water and and stuff to eat, shelter, protection, all of our survival needs. And then when our survival needs are certain, we then seek enhancement needs that enhance our life, that improve our life, that impact the quality of our life. And when you don't have something you want that you think is going to improve the quality of your life, it just means you haven't recreated the recipe for that result. I said all of that to talk about CRM and why I think you need a CRM is that there are recipes for results built into CRMs. And when the machine takes over some of the behaviors, it leaves the humans with less choices, less fatigue, less stress, and better execution of those better choices. And so all I'm committed to do is to help you execute better choices. And that's really the core of it, right? How can you execute better choices? And the first thing you have to do is you have to systematize the choice. And then you optimize the choice. And then you accelerate. Right? And you build the race car, and then you optimize it, and then you innovate from there. And I build highly optimized sales race cars, and I do that for small businesses because, quite frankly, the big businesses are beyond my scope of personal skills. It takes a team, it takes more time, it takes more resources, and I don't care about those big businesses. I think the small business owner needs the help to fight the mechanized army. I mean, this is Star Wars. We're the rebels to the big empire, and the big corporations are the empire in our marketplace. And they produce and they diffuse the value. Actually, their goal is to simplify and eliminate. I mean, if they had it their way, everybody would be driving a black truck. I mean, I wouldn't do a car, I'd do a truck, right? If you had to, right? If life would be so much better if everybody would just drive a black truck, same black truck, and then all the problems of the world would go away. Corporations could be the most efficient, and they would commoditize the black truck. The problem is there wouldn't be enough jobs for anybody to buy the black truck because everybody's just building black trucks, and once you got your black truck, you're good. There's nothing else has to be done. Luckily, there's more needs to be fulfilled. So, if you want to run a life that fulfills the vision you had of the business when you started the business, it's time to download all the knowledge you've acquired to be as successful as you are, and then systematize that knowledge so that we can optimize those patterns, and then we can improve and innovate and accelerate the business as we learn and grow more, because we'll have capacity in our brains to process what the system is communicating, so that we can find and adjust the system to best adapt in the environment. That's really it. That's the goal. And I'll go back to recipes, right? There's a recipe for the perfect loaf of bread. We've all at some point, and that perfect loaf could be personal, or you could join in. You know, that's what the loaf of bread on the shelves in the grocery store, that's the same all around the country. If that's your perfect loaf of bread, guess who figured out how to produce it? The person that made it. However, it's not true. You couldn't if you had the recipe, not everybody could reproduce that loaf of bread, even if they followed the recipe exactly, in all the places that loaf of bread is sold. Why? Because the environment's different. You couldn't bake that loaf of bread in New Orleans the same way you would in Denver, the same way in Atlanta, the same way in Utah, because the environment's different. But you can adapt, you can adjust the recipe for the environment. And in the environment, knowing your environment, knowing the recipe that works, and being able to adjust for that is the keys to the kingdom. So, that's that. There's that. All right, I'm done. I'm going to stop listening instead of talking.